Hi everybody, everyone that's out there. Firstly, I apologise that I've had to rush this onto a different medium because my computer didn't seem to be working very well with the Wi-Fi. So I apologise I can't necessarily see everybody's faces at this point. But thank you very much for giving up your time on a Friday evening. We wanted to put this on as a chance for members of the club to speak to, listen to, hear from a swimmer that's kind of been there and done it, pretty much everything. A true high performance swimmer in the real sense of the words, come through the club. I'll go into a few more of those things in a minute. But it was a really good opportunity for people to pose questions. So thank you very much to those people that have sent questions in advance. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. So Matt essentially is in charge of all the IT stuff that we're doing here. So Matt's going to keep everybody muted. And what I'm essentially going to do is just going to talk through with Alicia her swimming, her experiences, everything she's been through, all the highs and lows, to kind of give you guys a real good understanding of what it takes to get to the highest level, essentially. When we finish that, we'll then open the floor up to anybody if anybody's got any questions. Where people have sent questions in advance, I've pretty much rolled them up into the kind of things we're going to discuss. So hopefully we'll tick them all off as we kind of go through. But we'll have a little section at the end, a little time at the end for people just to actually unmute themselves and just ask a few questions as well. So firstly, just thank Alicia for being here. Thank you very much for giving up your time. It looks like it's a real hardship out in the sun in California at the moment, but thank you very much.
Okay.
And just to introduce Alicia, for people who don't know who she is or what she's kind of been through, Alicia joined Guildford when you were 10, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 years old, in county squad, came through county squad, regional squad, national age group squad, and then youth squad, and then has now progressed off to training out in California now at university, so education and swimming out in California. Career highs, national champion, medal at European juniors, 200 IM, youth Commonwealth Games gold medalist, World University Games gold medalist. Tell me if I'm embarrassing you at any point, Alicia. Currently ranked as second on the 200 IM across the country at the moment. And the interesting thing about Alicia, and the thing that makes it really poignant her being here now, is she's obviously 200 IM swimmer is kind of her speciality event at the moment. So she's gone through all 4 strokes and had her ups and downs with all of them. But the thing that Alicia probably won't tell many of you is that she's done all this and exceeded extremely well with her education. And this is why she becomes a very good person to talk through what she's been through, because she's done it in the backdrop of achieving great GCSEs, great A-level results, and going on to a brilliant university. And we'll come on to that a little bit later as well. So again, if people want to ask questions around that, we can do. But essentially, we've got somebody here in front of us now who's achieved a huge amount, still achieving a huge amount, still swimming and still training. So we've got a chance to kind of just talk through her journey and what it's been like. So Alicia, if you're happy, what I'd just quite like you to do, if this is okay, and I know I've kind of sprung some of these on you a little bit, could you kind of just talk through your progression through high performance and how you found it from your side, from a swimmer side?
Yeah, of course. So I obviously joined Guildford when I was 10 years old, and honestly just was in the sport because I really enjoyed it. I didn't get into it because I was good or anything like that. I kind of just loved being in the water, and Richard was my coach at my school, which brought me over to Guildford. And I kind of just progressed from there. When I was 12, I made nationals. I actually full started to qualify and should have got disqualified, but I did make nationals, and that kind of started my journey in high performance. I kind of view it as I went from just qualifying to in the same meet getting second, and I think that kind of put the expectations on myself to be a high performance swimmer, and started that journey that I'm still on now. And it was definitely highs and lows. I can probably count more nationals that I've been to that I haven't met my expectations and things like that than I actually have. And there are times when I was 14 or 15 where I did question if I wanted to be in the sport or things like that, and kind of just chipped away at it. And it is something that I've always enjoyed. And so, you know, I have had the highs and lows. And at 17, I switched back to Lee when Richard retired at Nays in the squad. And made my first international team, which was European juniors. And that definitely, I think, propelled me to keep going. And I wanted to go to an American university because, as Lee said, my academics have always been so important to me. So that's kind of been the thing that's motivated me to keep going, even now at this age. And it has brought me to California. But yeah, I have, since the age of 12, I guess, always wanted to be a high performance swimmer. And I don't really know, I don't know what to say, but yeah, I have had a lot of highs and a lot of times where even at nationals, I've wanted to get medals or I've wanted to win and I haven't, or my little sister has beaten me. But there equally have been times where I have exceeded my expectations. And, you know, even at 17, going to British champs and swimming 6 events and getting best in all 6 events. So I have had those kind of night and day performances, but I think that has been what has fueled me to keep going even now. Yeah.
So you mentioned the kind of challenges you've been through, and you've been through a fair amount of challenges, say at nationals at almost the highest level you could compete at that point. With those challenges that came up, how did you deal with them, and how did you deal with them in the moment, and how did you deal with them in the days, weeks afterwards to help you stay motivated moving forward?
I think this is something that I'm still trying to work on, and in the moment it's really hard to kind of rationalize that. And I know particularly when I was 14 and 15 that I wasn't very good at that. And I think now just knowing that it is more of a learning opportunity and it's not career defining or it's not fatal to anything, it is, you know, in the grand scheme of things, just one race. Trying to take that and making sure that when I go back to training that I don't ever want that to happen again. And I want to learn from it more than anything. I think that has been the biggest thing I've started to take away from it. And when I was like, the biggest example I can give is when I was 18, you know, going up to Edinburgh with, I guess it was British champs then, with the kind of expectations of doing well and just being so far off everything, coming back and having to reframe that attitude was so hard. And it was like a week out for me that it took, but trying to just regain that perspective and know that it is one competition, you know, and it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, I think has been the attitude I'm trying to take now, and knowing that there'll always be another race to follow it up. Yeah.
So would you say those experiences that were hard, that were challenges, actually have made you a better swimmer as a result?
Yeah, and in the moment it doesn't seem like that. It really seems pretty terrible because you put so much time and effort into it, but actually those moments have been the ones that have pushed me more than the successes, I guess. Yeah.
So if you could give a little bit of advice to a younger swimmer, we've got quite a few younger swimmers on the call now. If you could give them a little bit of advice on what they should do if they have a bad swim or a bad weekend, what would you say to them?
I think there are quite a few things. I think in the moment it is really hard, but the biggest thing you can do for yourself and also for the team is after that race to kind of, as basic as it sounds, to go and warm down and separate your emotions from the team's emotions as well, because it does have such a big trickle-in effect to everyone else on the team, and to kind of contain that a little bit and then take the time to reflect. You know, you don't have to do it immediately. And for me, it honestly comes a few days after I race to just try and decipher what went wrong and go from there. But I think the biggest thing is to try and detach your emotions in the moment and focus on the next thing you've got to do, and then later down the line revisit it, and especially with your coach as well. I think that is the most important thing to do.
Yeah, that's really good for everyone to hear, because no swimmer is going to go through their entire swimming career just going on an up and up and up trajectory. There are going to be bumps along the road, and I guess if people can communicate well with coaches in the way that you've done brilliantly, and then learn from those bits you've been through, you become a stronger swimmer on the other side, which is really, really positive. So I want to flip it on its head a little bit, because somebody put in a question around your kind of pre-race routine, and we'll kind of just stick with the competition bit for now, I guess. You had an unbelievable week up in Sheffield in qualifying for European Juniors, where, as you said, 6 swims, 6 PBs, PB'd heats to finals, like everything just went perfectly that 6 days for you. What kind of routines did you use, or how did you get yourself in the right place? Because PBing for 6 days is very hard. But how did you manage that?
Well, I'm so specifically will know with my times before kind of I race. If I have a time that I'm racing, to the minute I work back kind of when I eat and when I warm up, when I put my suit on, when I have a snack. And for me, that just takes away the kind of thinking energy that I have to dedicate, and just I can put that more into my race. So I know the exact time like I'm going to have a banana or something like that, which sounds ridiculous, but it does make me feel a lot more kind of in control. And I think the biggest thing that I managed to do in that championships was the bit away from the pool, just having that good meal and sleeping. I think I slept, so I was probably going to sleep around 8-9 o'clock each night, but trying to get that down, and especially in the weeks before I got that, so that when I got there it was just second nature, was the biggest thing I think I did. And it just made it so much easier, just getting that routine down. And warming down, I hate doing it, but making sure I got at least like 1,200 meters in made me able to continue 6 days down the line and to keep going, even though I was so tired throughout the whole time. Yeah.
How long do you reckon it took for you to get into, or how many competitions do you think you went to practice the routine to be able to kind of get it right for when it really mattered?
That's hard. I feel like I have been building on that since I did go to my first nationals and didn't really have a plan. And I think each time just building on that and changing small things and trying what worked, particularly at the smaller meets. I think we are so quick to dismiss kind of counties or the level 3 open meets, but actually they're the best places where you have so many races back to back to try and get that locked down, so that when you do only have 1 race a day or 2 races a day, it's so much easier. So getting your head around doing those warm downs and those smaller things in those bigger like programs where you have about 6 or 7 races is like, I think the best thing you could probably do.
So then you've got this routine that you've worked on, developed and practiced over the course of your swimming career, essentially. What impact did that have on your nerves? Because somebody said, how do you cope with nerves before races?
It makes me less nervous because I feel a bit more in control, if that makes sense. Like, you don't know how you're going to swim when you get on the block or how others are going to swim. But I think if you can regain that control in the kind of hours leading up to your race, it definitely makes me feel a lot more calm, I'd say. And I think the other thing is, for me, when I get nervous, just remembering that it is just a race and try like going through the what ifs, you know, before, like, well, what if it doesn't go well? Well, that's okay. Like, it doesn't seem like it's okay at the moment, but it's not the worst thing that can happen. And equally, like, I'm there because I really enjoy it. Like, I'm not there because there's something huge riding on it. Like, I do have these goals and like dreams, but at the same time, like, I love just getting on the blocks and racing anyone. And I think if everyone can remember why they're there, it mitigates the stress and the kind of uncontrollables a lot more.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So leading on then from you kind of saying about you enjoy the sport, you enjoy being in water, you enjoy those things. You've been a high performance swimmer for a decade now, for 10 years. Yeah, that's how long you've been doing it. So somebody did get in contact and ask, like, how do you stay motivated? 10 years worth of committing most of your daily routine around your swimming and education. How do you stay motivated with it?
That's a hard question, because I feel like even now, particularly through this lockdown, like, that has been a question that I've definitely asked myself. You know, we kind of spent so long and we just suddenly were halted in everything we did. And I think for me, what motivates me is kind of 2 things, like holding on to that dream that I have of trying to go to the Olympics, but also knowing that that's a dream that I've had from 8 years old, or seeing the London Olympics when I was 12, just kind of drawing on that and remembering that I'm in the sport because I love it. Like, it's not something that I've been forced to do or anything like that. I think if you know why you want to do it, that carries your motivation through. And just the excitement that I get when I do swim well definitely outweighs the kind of negative side of things that don't seem worth it sometimes.
I guess you probably had inevitable moments where you felt a little bit demotivated, where you even said about that kind of 14, 15 year points where you felt it was a bit difficult at that point. Were there any strategies or anything you specifically did to stay motivated, to keep yourself driven? Or was it more a case of you still enjoyed it, but you just had some experiences that were more challenging at that point? Or
I think there are times where I haven't enjoyed it as well, and they have gone hand in hand. And I think kind of stripping it down and not doing it for the performance, I think the minute that we stop enjoying it is because we put all these loaded expectations on us, and then it becomes unenjoyable. Particularly for me, I feel like even just coming back from lockdown, I felt so out of shape. I felt terrible in the water and all these kind of things. And I guess those are kind of similar feelings to when I wasn't swimming well, when I was 14 and 15. And remembering that I'm not plateauing. Like, I think that's such a big fear, especially for kind of younger girls. That kind of idea that there is a plateau, there isn't. And you just have to be a bit more creative with how you can go forward, trying to use that strategy and being a little more innovative and getting back and trying different events, but also stripping it down to just enjoying being in the water. Like, I felt terrible getting back in after lockdown, but I was so happy to be back that it outweighed kind of the negatives of it. Lee, I can't hear you.
Somehow I managed to mute myself there. I apologize. It's been really interesting what we've seen with swimmers coming back. It's like people really appreciate being in the water now, having been out of the water for such a long period of time. So we've currently got across all the squads, the motivation is brilliant. Even during this lockdown with some of the land training stuff, and when we go back, I'm sure we're going to see another wave of kind of motivation. One of the challenges that a lot of our swimmers are going through, that I know you went through as well, was trying to balance things. How did you balance kind of your education with your swimming and your social life with your swimming? How did you get that balance right to make sure that when you were motivated, you could then do a really great job with your swimming as well as your education stuff?
On the social side of things, I think viewing social side as kind of the restorative part. In order to swim well, you have to have that social side. And if you don't have it, there's I notice that I don't swim well. And so, for example, on a Saturday after I've done training and do a bit of homework, I have a time, which is 4 p.m. that I cut off doing anything. And the rest of that day for me is social side. And if I don't do it, I'm so tired during the week, because that for me is kind of what, I guess, without like a lack of better phrase, fills my well, like kind of makes me feel a little more rested and things like that. So I have to, otherwise I won't, designate a time to be able to do that. And I think that's how I've managed to balance it and stay in the sport. I think the minute that you start sacrificing that social side, your swimming won't pay dividends, I guess. And with the academic side, it is hard, and it's always going to be hard, but there is time, there's always time to do things. And for me, like, I had to be so time efficient with my studying, but I also knew that I wasn't doing anything 6 to 8 a.m. Like, that didn't cut into my study time when I was training or anything like that. So I could balance it. It's just kind of figuring out the timetable that maximized that. And once I got into that, it became a lot easier.
Did you actually have, like, quite a few people like actually create a timetable for their week so they know exactly what they're doing? Did you actually do that, or did you just kind of mentally know what you needed to do at what point you were going to cut off? Did you actually write it down, or?
It's a bit of a mix of both, honestly. Like, I have a running kind of to-do list with my work and plan on that and know when the deadlines are and things like that. But I have to schedule in the social time. Otherwise, I will just sit down and study for as long as I can, because I know that I can do that, but there's no end to studying. And I think that's the issue, creating that time and carving it out. And for me, I know on Sunday, I'm not gonna be sociable. I want to study because it's pre-Monday. And so making sure I do that on Saturday is, I think, has been the key, especially since coming to Berkeley, why I'm a little more happier and stuff like that. And I get so much more out of the swimming because I look forward to that time that I have with my friends.
Do you find it hard to kind of stick to that routine? Do you find it hard to do that? Or
it's hard for me to get to 4 o'clock and shut my books and things like that, or because there's always something to do and there's always pieces of work or things you could be doing instead. But trying to change my attitude to knowing that being sociable will help my academics or it will help my swimming. I think trying to reframe that attitude makes it a little easier to know, because I guess it's just like doing a training session or getting that extra piece of sleep in. It is actually so needed. So to change that mindset and that it is something that I have to do well in certain things makes it a little easier.
Yeah, that's good. And then when you've got that kind of balance going, where you've got your balance of your education, your social life, and your swimming, also just want to keep it a little swimming specific in terms of the conversation. How did that affect your training when everything was in sync and everything was going in the right direction? Did you feel like you trained better? Did you feel like it gave you more of an advantage that you could then concentrate more in terms of what you needed to do?
Yeah, I feel like I was ready to get back in the water on Monday morning. And like even now, I am more excited to get back in through the week and kind of do what I need to do during the weekend on Saturday morning and train well and have that incentive to close that end of the week. And I think it makes it a lot easier to get through the week, knowing that you have something to look forward to. And I do get more out of my swimming sessions as well, knowing that. Yeah.
So just opening up on a slightly different angle, you've obviously got goals and ambitions of things you want to go and achieve. So you've mentioned there a couple of times about one of your goals is to try and get to an Olympic Games. How do you set out your goals that sit kind of below that, the kind of the process goals that get you there? So if you've got everything balanced in terms of your education, your social life, and your training, if you're turning up to a training session, how do you make sure you stay on top of the goals and things you've set yourself within that session or that month to make sure you ultimately get to that goal at the end?
I've honestly tried to do like quite a few things, but I think the thing that has been most helpful for me in the past few years is the kind of the smaller micro goals. And something that we have to do here maybe once a month is tell other people, like tell our teammates 1 or 2 things that we want to do for the week or for the next few weeks, and to focus on that. So for me, the biggest thing that I've tried to work on is to work on my performance in training, not necessarily the time and the outcome, because that's going to vary each day that we train, but to know that if I don't feel good in the water or whatever, my attitude is so much more important. And if I stay committed and I see it as an opportunity to get better, that I'm going to swim a lot better when it counts and things like that. And so those kind of micro goals of reframing my attitude, or if it is a hard set, to be a little more positive around it, has helped me. And I think you don't realize the kind of momentum that it builds then to get you to your bigger goals. And I do have in-season time goals, like I do have little benchmarks, but the accumulation of the training is so much more important for me, especially now, because that's the biggest benchmark that you have, to just keep checking in with that. And the smaller kind of goals make the bigger ones seem way more manageable.
Can you give some examples of some of the like micro goals that you've actually set yourself, if you don't mind?
Yeah. So for me, my fly, like I kind of break it down with each stroke, but like my fly, for example, in training, to try and get near 15 on all of my fly turns, just so that when I am at the start of an IM, it makes it a lot easier and I don't have to spend much more energy and things like that, is one that I would have. Or my freestyle, I am in a program with some really good freestyle swimmers. One of the girls' long course is a 154. And so it intimidates me when we do a kind of set like that, but to try and always challenge those people and think about my last 50 at champs on a 200 IM, that's kind of a micro goal of mine, you know, no matter how I feel on my freestyle, to not be afraid, because I can't be afraid when I swim it in April, you know. And so those are kind of the small things. Or try not to breathe into a turn. That one, you know, I think it's pretty tedious, and that everyone has that goal and things like that, but it is still something that I need to work on.
And have you then felt the benefits of getting those micro goals right when you've then been to meets, and how have you then felt when you've then got it right?
I feel really good when I get it right in meets, but I guess the trade-off is always, you know, there's always something else that there is to work on and to try and reset that. And so I see it as like a really good positive to try and get that feedback. But to me, it is a bit more of a checklist of like, okay, now that's fine. Like, what's the next thing to kind of work on? So I know I could do a better job of being a bit more happy with the kind of progression, but yeah.
Well, it shows how much there is to work on, isn't it? And 200 IM, I think, exposes everything. It's got all the turns in there. It's got all the strokes in there. It is a real challenge. So it's good you have that checklist to kind of go through. Just on a side note, the 154 200 freestyler, that's about 2 seconds quicker than the British record. So that's handy having somebody like that to train next to as well, which is good. So just another thing that's quite interesting. So if you're sharing on a monthly basis, if you're sharing your goals with other people, how does that affect the team dynamic?
I think the biggest thing that we try and cultivate here, which I wish that I had done from a younger age, was it makes you, saying it out loud makes it a little more realistic, but it's one thing telling your coaches, it's another thing telling the people you train with each week. And it becomes effective when you hold each other accountable to that, and knowing that it's not kind of mean or harsh to tell someone, you know, you had this goal, like, you can, like, come on, like, pick it up, or you can do it, isn't horrible. It's more of a caring place, in that if you're training well and holding someone accountable, it pushes you as well. And I think knowing that you have this goal, you have a responsibility as well for your teammates to stick to it, so that you can make them be the best they are, I think is the biggest thing for that.
Yeah, you're essentially helping each other get the best out of what you're all committing so much to.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure when you go and swim relays or NC2As goes great, that then team bond is even stronger, right?
Yeah. And it's hard in the moment. I think people take feedback differently as well, especially when you're in a team of 24 girls. I think that telling people certain things goes in different ways. But when you do have that good swim, it is so much more worth it. You know, you spend way too much time to be kind of soft and nice about it. You know, I think having those harder conversations with each other, even like not even just with the coaches, but as teammates, is so important.
Yeah, that's great. And just actually on your relationship with then coaches you currently work with or have worked in the past, how have you found that's helped you either with your goals or with your ambitions or things you want to achieve? How have you kind of used those relationships to get the best out of your swimming?
I think something that I'm trying to work on and improve my relationships is just to try and be a little more open and honest with how I'm feeling. I think I expect kind of the people that I work with to kind of read my mind a little bit more than they are capable of. I need to be a lot more open. But knowing that, trying to be vulnerable with them and explain how I feel and things like that, I think is the biggest thing for me to try and be successful, because that is the thing that builds those relationships. And just trying to flag up a bit sooner if I am struggling, or if something's going well, to try and communicate that, because it does have such a powerful effect. And I think I'm only now realizing that since like the post lockdown and, you know, coming back off quite a few things going on.
Yeah, that is good. Right, and it's good that you've got some great coaches and support around you as well to be there to try and help you through it. Someone asked a question, which is like one of my favorite questions to ask anybody. What advice would you give your younger self now? If you could go back in a time machine, what advice would you give, say, an 11 or 12-year-old Alicia?
I think honestly, just enjoy the little things way more. I have been thinking back, I guess, on my journey a lot recently, and you get to counties and that's an achievement. Then you get a medal and that's an achievement. Then you discredit it because you want to qualify for regionals, and you kind of go on this upward journey, and you kind of forget about how great the things you have accomplished actually are. And I think just remembering like the first time I got a certain like regional qualifying time, I wish that I had kind of enjoyed that a bit more, and especially as I had gone on, not discredited those kind of achievements for bigger things. I wish that I had kind of enjoyed it a bit more, knowing that going to counties and being the best in Surrey is such an achievement. And like I guess you get to a new place and that's good, but going back and enjoying that more, like I wish that I had done that, because yeah
no, it's good, and I think it's something that everyone's so ambitious and keen and driven that it's so quick to jump to what's the next thing in front, and maybe forgetting just to celebrate and enjoy what's actually happening in that moment. That's brilliant. It's really insightful, and I think it's a really good bit of information for everyone. Somebody did also ask, what's it like at American University? What's it like out training in the States? How does it differ? What's it like? Are you enjoying it? I guess probably what they're trying to get to.
I love it. I did not think that I would love it as much as I did. I'd been at Guildford for so long. I hadn't moved away from home or anything like that. So I was really scared, but it is so different. And I think I did jump straight into it. I didn't kind of look back after I did move, and embracing the kind of new things of like yards and things like that, and knowing that I was in a different place but with another team, and keeping my team from back home, keeping the kind of Guildford network really helped me. And I think just kind of drawing on both of those experiences, and I don't know, like it definitely refreshed my passion for swimming, just having a new insight into everything. And it is strange being so far away from home, but I'm so happy that I can be in a place where I can still study and I can swim outside and have that nice weather and all those kind of things. I think it's made me a lot more grateful for the sport itself.
Yeah, that's great. It's brilliant. And from our side as a club, we're obviously really proud to see you go out and excel out, and not just at a university up the road, but literally you've changed continents. It's a great achievement. So well done. The only real final question we've actually got is around lockdown. So you've mentioned it a few times. How have you kind of coped with the lockdown situation? Because America was kind of locked down a similar kind of time frame to when we were all shut down, and you were in a similar situation where you were out of the pool. How have you coped with lockdown, and then also how have you found things since you've gone back?
Honestly, so I flew back as soon as trials were cancelled, the Olympics were postponed and things like that. I flew back to the UK and stayed there from March all the way through to August. And I didn't have very good coping strategies, to be completely honest, at the beginning. And it was really hard. I, like everyone else, I had goals and that just was completely taken away. And I think resetting myself took way longer than I thought it was going to. And I think only now I'm starting to kind of regain my feet. But I think, honestly, and I know I've said it quite a lot, just trying to find the enjoyment back out of it and forget about the performance aspect has been the thing that has kind of gotten me through. I do have these goals, but at the same time, I want to I don't know. I just want to be in the sport, and
Yeah. So, and then how's your racing gone? Because you have raced a few times since you've been back in the water. How have they gone?
They've gone well. I was shocked. I think the lockdown actually, as much as it sucked, I think being able to get better in other ways has given an opportunity to swim faster and perform better. And I think that there is a silver lining to that.
Yeah, just we've seen 9 club records fall just before we had this second lockdown. And it seems like that when I spoke earlier about that motivation of swimmers coming back in and really valuing it and working on things they didn't believe they could maybe achieve before lockdown has actually then had a big impact on people. Do you feel like this is now a wave of momentum that you can carry through to April, to when you hopefully Olympic trials take place?
I'm hoping so. I think that there is so much uncertainty, but trying to take things day by day and carrying that momentum will help. Yeah, I'm hopeful, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and that was actually another question that was asked, was like, what are your kind of plans for the rest of this season? What does the rest of the season look like for you? I know it's a little bit uncertain with certain things going on, but what are your kind of rough plans for the rest of the year?
So right now I obviously have like kind of two pieces, like the collegiate season and the Olympic season. So on the collegiate front, I'm waiting to hear if we have a national championships, which would be March. And then I would look to fly home and train and then compete at Olympic trials. So I guess that is my plan, but at the moment it is more about my training and trying to race at the opportunities we do get. Yeah.
We've had a little question pop up that I'll just quickly ask you now. What age did you actually start swimming?
I think I started about 6, 7, maybe 8. I'm not too sure. I was at a very small club and at school, and then I moved to Guildford at 10. So I'd say properly at 10, but I'd started with my school and stuff like that before. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you remember the training hours that you did as you progressed through?
I didn't train very much when I was 10. Honestly, I think even when I was 12, 13, my hours were pretty bad. I think I did my first land training session when I was about 13.
Right.
But I think it's progressed. Like now I actually do less than I did when I left Guildford, and just being a little more efficient. I probably do 20 hours combined with swimming and gym. But I would say it's not so much about the hours, it's more about what you do in that time. And, you know, doing 12 hours and getting good workouts in and good sessions is far more effective than 14 of just kind of empty swimming and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah,
brilliant. Has anyone got any, that's kind of the majority of the questions we kind of had laid out that we were going to talk through. I think I'm hoping that's covered off all the questions we got in advance as well. I'm fairly sure it has. But does anybody have any other questions that they want to kind of pose or put out at this point? Feel free to take yourself off mute if you want and just ask any questions, or pop them in the chat box equally.
So I have a question for Alicia Wilson. Richard Garfield here. Alicia, you are good at all 4 strokes, and that makes you an excellent 200 and 400 IM swimmer, should we say. 200 IM though is your main event. Tell us about the training, if you can, that you do now that makes sure that you have a balance between all 4 strokes. Because we're still a very strong multi-stroke club, specializing 200 IM, 400 IM. And a lot of these swimmers here around our table tonight I think would benefit to know the emphasis and how you think about it. What's your weak stroke? What's your strong stroke? How do you sort of mix it up? And how do you feel about each one? And how do you make the weak one strong?
Okay. Sorry, I just had to move as well. But the coffee shop was closed. I would say that any stroke you do, every single stroke kind of helps. And I didn't realize that until I came here. So it doesn't matter if you're a freestyle swimmer, your breaststroke, improving that helps so much with your freestyle. And so for me, it's trying to pull out the strengths in one stroke and put them into the other. And I think that's something that, you know, when I came back in 2019 for British champs, my breaststroke, we kind of spoke about it. It did improve a lot in just one race. And I think part of that was trying to put things in my fly and take them out and put them into my breaststroke. And it sounds pretty abstract, but if you can improve different strokes, especially when one isn't going very well, that's really important. And that's kind of what I try and do in training. I try not to focus too much if one isn't going well now, and switch to another stroke and know that that's probably helping me in some way. So our program here, although that we are all specialized in our strokes, we'll all do an IM set and we'll all do certain sets because of that kind of ethos. And for me, every session trying to do another stroke or trying to do 2 different strokes has been really important, and having that kind of approach that, I don't know, like I think everything helps everything, if that makes sense. And it's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but being prepared to be uncomfortable in training across things that are my weaker stroke, or putting myself against people that are quicker than me in different strokes, and same with the others, expecting the others to do that, for me, I think has helped me be an IM swimmer.
Great, thank you.
We've got a few other little questions that have just come up as well, and I'll just kind of fire through them. Did you find it helps to have friends inside and out of swimming? I'm guessing that means kind of like different friendship groups, so you can switch off to swimming as much as have friends that understand swimming. Do you find that helps you?
Yeah, like I think having friends inside of swimming gets you through those sets, knowing that you guys are in it together. And I think if you guys can protect that and keep each other in swimming for as long as you can, it will take you personally way further in the sport, just knowing that, you know, you're doing it not just for yourselves but for your friends. Because when you do get to the top, you know, obviously people start to quit and things like that, and if you can keep each other in it, it's far less lonely, but it's also far more motivating and excitable when you go training to see your friends. And equally, I've always had a small group of friends outside of swimming, because that's my way to switch off. So kind of when I talk about Saturday, for me, that's socializing with people at Cal from other sports and getting away from that swimming scene, so that I'm not Alicia the swimmer, I'm just the person. Yeah,
no, it's good. I can see how useful that's going to be. Why did you move to the USA?
I think for me, I was interested in kind of the UK universities, but to me, swimming and academics shouldn't be a choice. They should work together. And I think when I do well in one, I excel in the other. There's not a trade-off between them. They do go hand in hand. And so for me, the best place for that was America. And also, you know, I had read about the coach here and things like that, and I'd kind of seen the swimmers, and I wanted to be in an environment where someone had coached, you know, more than 30 Olympians and stuff like that. And in a female coach, I hadn't had that. So for me, I kind of wanted to take the experience that I had from Guildford and put them in a new place, but not sacrifice my academics, because I do swimming because I love it and I want a future in it. But I also have ambitions in like the business world and things like that. And I think it's so important that you don't give up on one dream for the other, because, you know, you can pursue both.
Yeah, and we all know there's few swimmers that will make a career out of swimming. It's important to have that balance, so you come away from your swimming career with something behind you, I guess. What kind of main sets do you have to do for IM? For example, 12 200s. I feel like this was asked by Richard under Flavio Russo's name.
Yeah, honestly, one of the sets Richard had me do was 12 200s IM best effort. Some of the hardest sets I've done at Cal since being here haven't even been that long. I hate underwater sets, and a lot of the underwater sets we do are the hardest ones, I think. But we do a lot of IM sets and a lot of like hundreds fly to back to breast to free, stuff like that, and just always changing the stroke in the set. It is really hard, but they're the kind of sets we do for IM. It's not, I guess, the full 2 hours on a certain stroke. It's a lot of the time switching or picking two and going back and forward between the two, which definitely keeps me entertained.
Good, brilliant. We had another one pop through. Is it good to do things outside of swimming? I guess that's...
In what sense, like sports or?
I'm guessing it's social and sport, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'd say for myself, I started swimming, but I did gymnastics, field hockey, and all the other sports that I could do. because I enjoyed them. And it's slowly, like I slowly did stop them, but I think it has helped me in my swimming career. And even now, part of our land training is, as crazy as it sounds, like gymnastics and doing skipping and stuff like that, and helping us get better on the land so that when we get in the water, we're more athletic and things like that. So I would definitely say, like, there's no need to sacrifice your other sports for swimming, you know, like they do help each other. And if you can commit to both, like, I think that's the best thing that you could probably do, especially for when you get older. And social wise, I guess, like, I've kind of hit on that.
Yeah, we kind of said that already. Yeah. So going with the kind of the dual sport thing, or taking part in a couple of sports as well as swimming. Because you're now just swimming, and there was a point when you were younger where you were doing, you said, hockey, gymnastics, and swimming. How did that kind of transition to being just swimming as you got older?
Swimming was definitely the one that I enjoyed the most and that I could see myself doing further. And the others became a little bit more like a hobby, I guess, as the swimming intensity raised up and more of a social platform. And I think the minute that I felt like I didn't want to be there, or I had to start sacrificing my own swimming for it, was the time that I knew that I just wanted to focus on swimming. And obviously the academics becomes more rigorous. So I think I was 13 when I stopped gymnastics. Maybe like 15 when I stopped hockey. But they were never as intense as the swimming. Like, I always kept them a little bit more for fun, and just as kind of a release, I guess. Yeah.
I feel like there were lessons you learned from those other sports that you've then put into your swimming as well, though.
Yeah, especially coming into this program, like I was a little shocked, like coming into Cal, we will be doing cartwheels on poolside and handstands to somehow help our swimming. And actually, having done gymnastics, it was a little less scary having to do that. There are some people who don't know how to cartwheel, and I'd say that having that definitely helped me and has helped me a lot in the water.
How does that go down with Terry when people can't do cartwheels?
Honestly, it's more scary for those around them, for all of us trying to do it all together. But it doesn't go down well. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's all the questions in the chat. Has anybody else got any other questions they'd like to ask Alicia at this point? I have to like scroll through to see if people are nodding, or honestly, if there's anything you're thinking, or now's a really good time to ask any of those kind of questions. Anything around competition or training? Mr. Garfield, any more questions?
No, I want to personally thank Alicia Wilson for coming on and giving us a really great hour of her time, and of giving a real insight into how you go from being a 10-year-old in the sport to being, you know, trying to knock on the door of the Olympic Games. You know, I privileged to coach Alicia for a number of years and know how strong-minded she is, and how, as her coach, she made me probably a better coach because she demanded so much of me. And that's what I would want every swimmer in this forum to do, is to be so on the ball, so demanding of their swim time, and so attempting to be perfect all the time. Attempting, because it's impossible to be perfect, but attempting to get everything right. I hear coaches at high performance, particularly Steve and Matt, talk about swimmers just not listening yet, not focusing on the technique and the detail. And I can tell you, when we gave Alicia Wilson instructions about how to get her hand entry in the water, or accentuate a leg kick, or hold a glide on breaststroke, she listened very, very carefully and would work really hard on putting that into her training session. And you could see it. And that's what we're looking for all the time. Constantly, a swimmer constantly improving. And, you know, as I say, I was blessed and feel very privileged that I was able to coach somebody as wonderful as Alicia. a couple of years ago now, but still, it was a great privilege. So yeah, that's my statement for today.
Bizarrely, I think she's gone.
No, she's still there.
Oh, it seems to disappeared on my screen for some reason. Somebody did pop through with another quick question there, actually. And you mentioned the banana. We had many discussions on poolside about how much banana should I have? When should I have my banana? But what did you actually eat before or after competitions or around competitions?
So I know it varies for like certain people, but for me, I like to have a bowl of pasta the night before and to try like kind of get in that, because I don't like eating as much in the morning. But when I wake up, to try and have a bagel, a banana, or like some fruit, yogurt, just try and have that balanced meal that I would definitely have any other morning, because it is tiring being on poolside and trying to force myself to eat enough in the morning when I am nervous. It is hard, but it's also important because I don't want to get behind the blocks and be hungry. I'd then have another banana, but honestly, like could probably have an apple or something other than another banana when I get out of warm up, because again, like I don't want to be hungry, but I don't want to feel heavy behind the blocks. And then after I race, just trying to get in, like I hate milk. They're trying to get me to have milk here instead after, but something like that where I kind of refuel, and then I'd have a big lunch. But I'd say like not having a big meal less than 2 hours before I swim, but definitely making sure I get that in. I think like 2.5 hours before has become really important for me. Yeah.
So kind of when you're on deck, that whole thing of just like not being hungry, not being bloated, just trying to balance your diet as you go through that, and then fill yourself up afterwards and go again for the finals. Yeah. That's great.
And like, like if I am feeling hungry, to then have like an energy bar or something, but not like a full meal, just something small. Or if I have back-to-back races, something sugary in between, like an orange. So it's not like I don't feel sick behind the blocks. Yeah.
No, it's brilliant. It's really good advice for everybody. There's one more question that's popped up. It's quite a deep one. Have you ever doubted yourself and your abilities, and how did you get past that?
I would definitely say like kind of the minute that I started growing, like my first nationals I swam breaststroke, I wasn't an IM swimmer. And the minute I started growing, I was so far off my times for breaststroke. And it wasn't that I wasn't putting the effort in, it was just, you know, I was like changing and I wasn't 12 years old anymore. And that was probably the biggest time that I doubted myself. I was so worried that I'd hit my peak and stuff like that, which sounds ridiculous now, but I was like, well, that's the end of it for me. Like I had a good run, like I'm done. But I think trying to change, there's what, 16 race events in swimming. There's a lot of events, and trying to reshift my focus and find that enjoyment or get excited over swimming a best time, even though it was something that I never swam, became really important for me, because that's kind of what kept me going. And that's what I guess started me on the journey of doing IM. You know, it was out of frustration of not doing well in breaststroke and branching out to other races and things like that. And that was how I got over it, I guess, to try and get like the smaller wins in like a different race and the enjoyment again without putting all that expectation. And it took me from the age of 14, it was only last year when I was 19, to do a best time on my breaststroke again. And it took 6 years, but I managed to progress in other ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where, as a club, that's why we're so keen for the IM focus, because it does give people different options of different roads to go down. When one road feels like it's shut off, go and develop yourself a different way, and then that road that was closed off will come back in the future. So no, it's great. Yeah. It's really good to hear. I reeled off a whole lot of things that you'd achieved in your career up to this point, and I kind of just want to thank you for what you've done today. It's obviously going to help a load of people out that are listening to this and give them ideas and inspiration. But all those lists of things you've achieved, I think you've grown so much in achieving all of those. And I know myself and Richard are both really excited to see what you go and achieve over the next few years with your swimming, because we know there's still a lot more to come. And so thank you very much for your time today. Genuinely really appreciate it. And we're really looking forward to the next few years of your swimming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
That's right. And sorry you got kicked out of the cafe.